This is live from New Delhi. You're watching TT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Scuffle, and coming up in the next hour. Scuffle between ruling party and the opposition in India's parliament. NDA MPs filed police complaint against Rahul Gandhi for alleged assault on BJP member parliament. Russian president says Moscow is ready to compromise over Ukraine in possible talks with US President-elect Donald Trump on ending war. US President Joe Biden's administration sets new target under Paris Climate Agreement to slash greenhouse gas emission by 61% to 66% by 2035. And International Cricket Council confirms hybrid model for Champions Trophy and ICC events from 2024-2027 cycle for India and Pakistan matches. The Congress versus BJP protest battle over India's Home Minister Amit Shah's Ambedkar statement dominated proceedings on the penultimate day of the winter session of India's parliament. The fallout first reached the Speaker's room and then reached Parliament Street Police Station, with MPs from two parties trading complaints and allegations of physical assault of their women leaders. DD India's Anil Thomas has this detailed report.
Home Minister Amit Shah's remarks on B.R. Ambedkar triggered a major uproar in Parliament. Protests by opposition Indie Bloc MPs and the ruling NDA turned violent, leading to a physical alteration that left two BJP MPs, Mukesh Rajput and Pratap Chandra Sarangi, hospitalized.
कांग्रेस के इतिहास को आज पूरे देश के सामने रखा गया, उससे कांग्रेस पूरी तरह से झल्लाई हुई है और जो उनका असली काम करने का तरीका है वो आज सामने आया। किस तरह से उन्होंने हमारे दो सांसदों को धक्का मुक्की करके उनको घायल किया। दोनों सांसद अभी हॉस्पिटल में हैं। ये संसद की मर्यादा है।
Earlier this morning, opposition MPs led by Congress staged protests in Parliament dressed in blue, a colour associated with Ambedkar, and demanded Amit Shah's apology. Meanwhile, BJP MPs countered with their own protest, accusing the opposition of disrespecting Ambedkar. The confrontation reached a flashpoint near the Makar Dwar of Parliament, where members from both sides clashed. BJP MPs Pratap Chandra Sarangi and Mukesh Rajput reportedly sustained injuries and were shifted to the ICU.
खड़ा हुआ था, राहुल गांधी एक एमपी को धक्का लगा, मेरे ऊपर गिर पड़ा और मैं नीचे गिर गया। किसने धक्का मारा? राहुल गांधी ने? हाँ, राहुल गांधी ने।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi called up the injured MPs and inquired about their health.
आज जो लीडर ऑफ ऑपोजिशन श्रीमान राहुल गांधी ने जिस तरीके से आज गैर प्रजातांत्रिक तरीके से प्रजातांत्रिक व्यवस्था में लोग जो हमारे सांसद थे वो प्रदर्शन कर रहे थे, उनके साथ धक्का मुक्की की, जिसमें हमारे दो सांसद घायल हुए, हॉस्पिटल में भर्ती हुए, उनका इलाज चल रहा है।
Rahul Gandhi, on the other hand, claimed that BJP MPs obstructed him and Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge from entering the Parliament building.
ये एंट्रेंस है पार्लियामेंट हाउस की जी, और हमारा अधिकार है अंदर जाने का, और बीजेपी के जो मेंबर्स हैं वो हमें अंदर जाने से रोक रहे हैं।
Leader of the opposition in both houses have written letters to the Speaker and Chairman seeking an inquiry into the security breach in Parliament.
We condemn this. We have written to Honorable Speaker of the Lok Sabha.
The clashes and ongoing protests forced both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha to adjourn.
Go on record. Nothing will go on record. We can't allow the country to be plunged in anarchy. Honorable members, we cannot allow the country to be plunged in anarchy.
BJP MPs then reached the Parliament Street Police Station to file a complaint in connection with the scuffle.
हमने सेक्शन 109, 115, सेक्शन 117, सेक्शन 125, सेक्शन 131 और सेक्शन 351 के अंतर्गत उनके खिलाफ कंप्लेंट दर्ज करवाई है। और अगर मैं आपको कहूं तो सेक्शन 109 अटेम्प्ट टू मर्डर है, सेक्शन 109 इज अटेम्प्ट टू मर्डर।
Women MPs from the Congress party too marched to the police station to file their complaints.
Two MPs are allegedly
injured and in hospital, while an FIR has been launched against the leader of opposition. The citadel of democracy has seen a new low today. With camera person Naveen Kumar, Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Staying with the parliament, now the leader of the opposition is facing heat from both outside and inside the parliament. The alleged parliament scuffle had not died down that a Rajya Sabha MP from the northeast has accused Congress leader Rahul Gandhi of misbehaving with her. DD India's Anil Thomas has the details.
Hours after allegedly causing injury to two BJP parliamentarians, Pangon Konyak, BJP MP from Nagaland, accused Rahul Gandhi of coming within personal space of her in parliament premises, thereby making her extremely uncomfortable. Konyak is a prominent BJP leader and the first woman from Nagaland to preside over a Rajya Sabha session.
Leader of opposition of the Lok Sabha, Shri Rahul Gandhi ji, came in very close proximity of me, and I really feel uncomfortable, and he started shouting at me, which I felt is very unbecoming of a leader of opposition.
Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju said the behavior by the senior Congress leader defied the parliamentary etiquette.
सांसद को धकेल करके फिजिकली जो चार्ज किया और लोकसभा के दो और सांसदों को श्री राहुल गांधी ने इतना जोर से धक्का मारा, खून निकला, हॉस्पिटलाइज हो गया। ये जो कांग्रेस पार्टी का बिहेवियर है, ये इतना शर्मनाक है, हम विश्वास भी नहीं कर सकते हैं।
The chairman of the upper house said the matter has been brought to his notice.
Honorable Member Parliament, and she has met me in my chamber also. I am looking into it. She was literally in tears. According to her, she could never believe that as a lady member, she would have to suffer so much at the hands of another member parliament. I am looking into it.
The allegations made against Rahul Gandhi have sparked discussions in political circles. As the matter involves the dignity of a parliamentarian, any further developments will likely draw considerable attention. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
In other news, Pakistan has denounced United States sanctions on its ballistic missile program as biased and putting regional peace at risk. Now, this in sharp response to United States slapping new sanctions on Pakistan's National Development Complex and 3 firms linked to its ballistic missile program, freezing their US assets and prohibiting American business with them. Here's more.
The United States has imposed new sanctions on Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile program, including on the state-owned defense agency, National Development Complex, that oversees the program. Pakistan has termed the imposition of new sanctions by the US as unfortunate and biased. Pakistan became one of the few countries to openly possess nuclear weapons in 1998. It has refused to sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty, a global agreement to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology. The United States said the executive order targets proliferators of weapons of mass destruction and their means of delivery in light of the continuing proliferation threat of Pakistan's long-range missile development. It accused the state-owned National Development Complex, which it says is responsible for the development of ballistic missiles, of working to acquire special equipment to test and launch the projectiles. In addition to the NDC, 3 other entities are Akhtar and Sons Private Limited, Affiliates International and Rockside Enterprise, all of which are based in Karachi, while the NDC is in Islamabad. As a result of these sanctions, the entities involved will face financial and trade restrictions, including being cut off from US markets and resources. American citizens will be barred from working with the NDC and 3 companies associated with it, which will all have their US assets frozen. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DT India News Hour, coming up next, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu warns Yemen's Houthis of a heavy price after strikes. And Dominique Pellicott and 50 others guilty in rape trial that shook the world. and Belgium to become first EU country to ban disposable vape sales.
Pollution of all types across the globe is a huge problem. But what is the solution to this? Does it require individual efforts, community action, or state interference? Let's take a look at some of the possibilities, challenges and opportunities.
They have to segregate their waste, manage their organic waste within their premises as far as possible. They have to hand over the rest of the waste, the residual waste, to the authorized waste collector.
When the local administration saw what I had done, it decided to build the drainage system you see here, connecting the whole area to it.
Trees are our lifesavers. They give us oxygen, and it's unfair to harm them by hammering iron nails into them just for the sake of ads.
You're watching DT India News Hour. I'm Scuffle, and now let's move on to Russia-Ukraine update. Russian President Vladimir Putin held the annual press conference in Moscow. He has called for long-lasting peace with Ukraine, gathering more support. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Brussels, saying that European security guarantees would not be enough for Ukraine. Here's more.
Signaling a potential shift in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed Moscow's desire for long-lasting peace rather than a short-term truce. He also voiced openness to compromise with US President-elect Donald Trump and stated that Russia has no preconditions for starting talks with Ukrainian authorities.
What can I offer to the President-elect Trump when we meet? First of all, I don't know when we will meet because he doesn't say anything about it. I haven't spoken to him for more than 4 years, and I am ready for it, of course, at any time. And I'm ready for a meeting if he wants it.
However, at his annual year-end presser, Putin acknowledged that Moscow should have launched its offensive earlier, indicating the country had not been fully prepared for a military campaign that has now stretched nearly 3 years. Despite the prolonged conflict, he reaffirmed that Russia is closer to achieving its strategic goals in Ukraine.
Combat operations are a complex thing, and therefore it is difficult and pointless to guess what lies ahead. But that is exactly what is happening, and we are moving, as you said, towards achieving our primary task. If I could look at the situation, certainly knowing what is happening now at the situation in 2022, that the decision which was made at the beginning of 2022, it should have been made earlier.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attended a European Union summit in Brussels, where leaders aim to send a strong message of continued support for Ukraine to the incoming US administration. Zelensky emphasized the critical need for unity between the US and EU to counter Russian aggression and bring peace to Ukraine.
For us, it's very important, especially from the very beginning of next year. We need very much unity between the United States and EU and countries of Europe. This is very important. We need this unity to achieve peace. And I think only together the United States and Europe can really stop Putin and save Ukraine.
European leaders are also stepping up efforts to play a more active role in the peace process. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called for Ukraine to lead its own peace initiatives, while Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban proposed a Christmas ceasefire to ease hostilities.
Just don't let thousands of young guys to die at Christmas time. That's so simple. And change the big quantity of numbers of war prisoners. Let them go home to their family for the Christmas days. So it's
not more than several days of peace.
In addition to diplomatic efforts, financial and military support for Ukraine continues to grow. The World Bank and the United Kingdom have extended new fundings to support Ukrainian government reforms aimed at stabilizing its economy. Britain also pledged an additional $286 million in military aid to bolster Ukraine's defenses against Russia. Despite these developments, the situation on the ground remains dire, with relentless crossfire reported from both sides. Triparthy for DD India.
A French court found Dominique Pellicot guilty on Thursday of repeatedly drugging and sexually assaulting his wife for almost a decade and inviting dozens of strangers for assaulting her unconscious body in a case that has horrified and shook the entire world. All the Frenchman's 50 co-defendants were also found guilty of rape, attempted rape or sexual assault, while their victim Gisèle Pellicot sat in the packed courtroom to hear the sentencing, having waived her right to the anonymity. Gisèle, who is 72 years of age, has become a symbol of female courage and resilience during the 3-month trial, and crowds of supporters outside the courtroom in the southern city of Avignon cheered as she appeared after the verdicts had been read out. Dominique Pellicot, who was married to Gisèle for 50 years, had pleaded guilty to the charges, and a panel of 5 judges sentenced him to the maximum 20 years in jail as requested by prosecutors. The court found 46 of the other defendants guilty of rape, 2 guilty of attempted rape and 2 guilty of sexual assault, handing down sentences of between 3 and 15 years in jail, less than the 4 to 18 years demanded by the prosecution.
By opening the doors to this trial on the 2nd of September last year, I wished for society to join in the debates that were held. I never regretted this decision. I trust now in our capacity to collectively seize a future in which each one of us, woman and man, may live in harmony with mutual respect and understanding.
French President Emmanuel Macron on Thursday said a visit to a hospital in Mayotte 5 days after Cyclone hit the French Overseas Department. After his arrival by helicopter, Macron spoke with locals who complained about the unknown death toll of the tragedy. In fact, some were carrying photos of missing friends or relatives. Only 31 deaths have been confirmed by hospitals, but the authorities fear that the death toll could be in the hundreds or even thousands as devastated areas remain inaccessible and heavy rains is expected in the north of the country. Macron conducted an aerial survey of the affected areas to assess the extent of damage caused by Cyclone Chido. He also interacted with officials over the situation. A team of rescue staff also accompanied him to provide further assistance. Also, a ship loaded with 50 tons of aid supplies arrived at Mayotte port on Thursday from the Reunion Island of France. Meanwhile, the death toll from the Cyclone Chido in Mozambique has also jumped to 73 from 45 reported earlier, the Southern African country's Institute for Natural Disasters said on Thursday. And now shifting focus to Syria and West Asia, where amid Turkey's announcement of no talks of a ceasefire deal between Turkey and Syrian Democratic Forces or SDF in northern Syria, Defense Ministry continues with the efforts towards safe return of Syrians to their country. Russian President Vladimir Putin has denied Russia's defeat while Iraq begins repatriating Syrian troops. Here's more.
Russia had not been defeated in Syria, and that Moscow had made proposals to the new rulers in Damascus over Russia's military bases there. Speaking at an annual conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he had not yet met with Bashar al-Assad, but planned to meet him and said he would ask about the fate of missing US reporter Austin Tice.
Of course, we look forward to peace in Syria Arab Republic. We maintain relations with all the groups that control the situation there, with all the countries in the region. The overwhelming majority of them tell us that they would be interested in us keeping our military bases in Syria.
Amid Turkey facing an ongoing threat along its border with northern Syria, Defense Ministry spokesperson said efforts continue to safe return of Syrians to their country.
Efforts for a voluntary, safe and respectable return of Syrians to Syria are continuing. Our priority is the elimination of the PKK-YPG terrorist organization that threaten the security of both Turkey and Syria. We will continue to take preventive and eliminatory measures against terrorist organizations.
The United Nations Special Envoy to Syria, Geir Pedersen, who has wrapped his trip to Damascus, said that he hoped to see the development of New Syria in the aftermath of country's recent political upheaval.
There are a few challenges. One is that the conflict isn't over yet. I'm very pleased that the truce have been renewed and that it seems to be holding. But hopefully we will see a political solution to that issue.
Syrian employees in Damascus have expressed their struggle with soaring transportation costs and fuel shortages.
I'm an employee at the Commercial Bank of Syria in the General Administration. We used to have good transportation, but now, because of the current situation, there's no mazut or benzene. Transportation has become very difficult.
Some people are now forced to walk to work, and there are others who are not going to their work because of this issue. The issue of cost of transportation, especially for those coming from different governorates.
Iraq has announced to start a repatriation program on Thursday for the Syrian troops who fled a lightning offensive that precipitated the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad. The Iraqi authorities are coordinating with the relevant Syrian authorities in this regard. Bureau Report, TD India.
Meanwhile, expressing concern, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has said that Israeli airstrikes in Syria are violations of the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity and must stop.
At the same time, extensive Israeli airstrikes continue. They are violations of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and they must stop. In the occupied Syrian Golan, the UN peacekeeping mission UNDOF continues to observe Israel Defense Forces personnel and equipment in multiple locations in the area of separation and in one location in the area of limitation. Let me be clear, there should be no military forces in the area of separation other than UN peacekeepers, period.
US and Arab mediators are working round the clock to hammer out a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Sources close to the talks say that the mediators at talks in Egypt and Qatar are trying to forge a deal to pause the 14-month-old war in the Hamas-ruled enclave that would include a release of hostages seized from Israel on October 7, 2023, along with Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. Mediators had managed to narrow some gaps on previous sticking points, but differences remained, the sources said. Sources also close to the mediation efforts say that Hamas had pushed for one package deal, but Israel wanted a phased one. Talks are focused on a first phase release of hostages, dead or alive, as well as a number of Palestinians jailed by Israel. On Tuesday, the sides discussed the numbers and categories of those to be released, but things have yet to be finalized, said a source who spoke anonymously because of the sensitivity of the talks. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday issued a stern warning to Yemen's Houthi rebels, stating they will pay a heavy price after Israel launched strikes in Yemen in response to a missile attack by the group. Netanyahu emphasized that, like Hezbollah, the Houthis would face severe consequences for targeting Israel.
After Hamas, Hezbollah and the Assad regime in Syria, the Houthi are almost the last remaining arm of Iran's axis of evil. They are learning and will learn the hard way that those who strike Israel will pay a very heavy price for it.
In the 11th summit of the D8 Organization for Economic Cooperation in Egypt on Thursday, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian urged a regional unity to address crises in Gaza, South Lebanon and Syria, calling it a religious, legal and humanitarian duty. This marks the first Iranian presidential visit to Egypt in over a decade. The D8, founded in 1997, includes Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nigeria, Turkey and Pakistan, promoting cooperation across Southeast Asia and Africa. Outgoing US President Joe Biden administration on Thursday unveiled a new climate target under the landmark Paris Accord just weeks before Donald Trump's return to the White House threatens to upend US efforts to combat global warming. According to White House statement, the United States commits to reducing economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 61-66% below 2005 levels by 2035, reflecting the world's second-largest polluter's goal of limiting long-term heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The US Congress has 2 days as of Thursday to avert a partial government shutdown after President-elect Donald Trump rejected a bipartisan deal on federal spending and demanded lawmakers to address the nation's debt ceiling before he takes office next month. Trump told his fellow Republicans in Congress to reject a stopgap bill that would keep the government funded past the deadline of midnight on Friday, saying that any of them who voted for the bipartisan bill should face primary challenges from within their own party in the 2026 midterm elections. That threat sent House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson and the rest of his leadership team back to the drawing board, trying to find a new compromise bill that could win the support of both his sometimes unruly 219 to 211 majority and clear the Senate, where Democrats hold a 51-49 majority. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. We begin with Malaysia, where Malaysia's High Court on Thursday acquitted Rosmah Mansor, the wife of jailed former Prime Minister Najib Razak, of money laundering and tax evasion, citing insufficient grounds to charge her. Najib and Rosmah have been the subject of multiple graft investigations since Najib's surprise election defeat in 2018. Well, Belgium is set to become the first EU country to ban the sale of disposable vapes starting January. The decision is part of an anti-tobacco drive amid concerns over their appeal to children and environmental harm. Amazon workers at 7 US facilities, including in New York, staged a walkout on Thursday during the busy holiday shopping season. The strike, involving around 10,000 workers, is being called the largest against Amazon, aiming to push the company into union contract negotiations. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, we will be discussing India-China agreeing on steps to resume Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, enhancing trans-border river cooperation and reopening Nathula border trade, with our special guest, former ambassador and strategic security chief or expert, joining us on the show. And also India's Ministry of Culture partners with Francis Museum's development to create Yuga Yugin Bharat National Museum.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, let's do a quick recap of the headlines. Scuffle between ruling party and opposition in India's parliament. NDA MPs file police complaint against Congress leader Rahul Gandhi for alleged assault on BJP MP. Russian president says Moscow is ready to compromise over Ukraine in possible talks with US President-elect Trump on ending war. Outgoing US President Joe Biden's administration sets new targets under Paris Climate Agreement to slash greenhouse gas emissions by 61% to 66% by 2035. Well, India and China on Wednesday agreed on steps to resume Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, enhancing trans-border river cooperation and also reopening of the Nathula border trade. The decision came following talks in Beijing between India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who are also the special representatives. They agreed on salience of stable, predictable and amicable India-China relations for regional and global peace as well as prosperity. Fuzail Ahmed of DD India reports.
India and China on Wednesday agreed to take concrete steps for resumption of Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, trans-border river cooperation and Nathula border trade. The development came following talks in Beijing between India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who are also the special representatives. According to a statement released by India's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the special representatives SRs exchanged views on bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. They provided positive directions for cross-border cooperation and exchanges, including resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, data sharing on trans-border rivers and border trade. The meeting was held in accordance with the decision taken during the meeting between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping of China in Kazan on 23rd October. The two leaders had affirmed that stable, predictable and amicable bilateral relations between India and China will have a positive impact on regional and global peace and prosperity.
हमारा मानना है कि भारत और चीन के संबंधों का महत्व केवल हमारे लोगों के लिए ही नहीं, लेकिन वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और प्रगति के लिए भी हमारे संबंध बहुत अहम है.
This was the first meeting of the special representatives since frictions had emerged in the western sector of the India-China border areas in 2020. Drawing on the learnings from the events of 2020, they discussed various measures to maintain peace and tranquility on the border and advance effective border management. They decided to use, coordinate and guide the relevant diplomatic and military mechanisms towards this purpose. While speaking in India's lower house of Parliament on December 3, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar had stressed that maintaining peace and tranquility in border areas is a prerequisite for the development of ties.
The situation arising after our counter deployment in 2020 called for multiple sets of responses. The immediate priority was to ensure disengagement from friction points so that there would be no further untoward incidents or clashes. This has been fully achieved.
On November 18, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi had met on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and acknowledged the progress made in disengagement from border areas. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval also called on China's Vice President Han Zheng. Doval also invited Wang Yi to visit India to hold the next round of Special Representatives meeting. Fuzail Ahmed reporting for DD India.
And we're very glad to be joined by our special guest on this broadcast, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat, joining us on the show. Thank you very much, sir. And also welcoming Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former Director General Infantry. Namaste, sir. Thank you both of you, gentlemen. Ambassador Kumar, I'd like to start with you. Now, looking back on the flip-flops and up and downs of the Sino-India ties or China-India relations over the past 7 decades, and particularly the consistent border standoff we have seen in Ladakh sector post-2013, do you think, looking at these 6 salient points, we have come to a point of establishing a sort of correct understanding of each other?
The honest answer. Thank you very much, Scuffle, for having me first.
Our pleasure.
No, the honest answer to your question would have to be not yet.
Okay.
I think what is significant is that there has been no dialogue or a consistent dialogue for the last 5 years at the highest level. But what you have seen over the last 2 months is that the President of China and the Prime Minister of India have met. The 2 foreign ministers have met. The special representatives have met, and not to mention or not to forget that the defense ministers have also met on the sidelines of the ASEAN Defense Plus Forum. So I think that is significant. There has been a plethora of contacts between the 2 countries. And that is, I think, extremely important. I think I just want to say the following, and I'm sure you will have follow-up questions for me.
Sure.
The fact that there has been separate readouts by India and China, that is, there has not been a joint statement. What you have is a separate readout by India and by China. I think those points of convergence and points of divergence are extremely interesting, and I will address them perhaps after my co-panelist makes his opening remarks.
Yes, the points of convergences along with the points of divergences is going to be my next question. But opening remarks from General Kulkarni, having said that, have we almost arrived at a stage of peaceful coexistence, or perhaps do you see a possibility of it in the sense we have made a beginning where we have finally reached to a stage where differences can be hashed out through dialogue and consultation?
Thank you, Scuffle. I think the ambassadors said it very well. Most important is the trust betrayal. There's been a trust betrayal over the years, and we had so many agreements, and if what has happened in 2020, that has to happen again, if ever it has to, then it is bad. Trust is very much important, and trust is something which has to be regained, and that is where the whole problem lies. It's good, trade talks to open, Mansover Yatra to be begun, the river sharing things to be done, perfectly fine, and all of it is very fine. But very important, what is it to be done on ground? Because disengagement has taken place, de-escalation is what is the next step, and then the de-induction part. But for the de-escalation, if the trust is there, then it's worth it. Because if there is no trust, then constant verification, it leaves everybody to, what could be well termed as very difficult, and you're on tenterhooks. And if you're on tenterhooks, then it's not worth it. Because ultimately, if the sensitivity of India is to be seen as peace and tranquility along the border, which was very important for the rest of it to follow. What they've done, yes, peace and tranquility, all that was spoken about. But if the kind of infrastructure that has come up, the kind of troops that have moved in, the kind of all the dual purpose villages that have sprung up, all indicate that there is bound to be tension, and all these border talks will be there. A positive development, no doubt, a positive development. But until and unless it is translated on the ground with trust, and that trust means real trust, not trust betrayal. The betrayal of trust is what the ball is in China's court, because they are the ones who betrayed trust. So it's very important for them to regain trust, and trust has to be regained by the Chinese.
Okay, interesting point. Do you agree, Ambassador Kumar, that the ball is in China's court in terms of working on that, or perhaps bridging the gap of the trust deficit? And to add to that, do you think there are more convergences than the differences or divergences?
So two important questions, Scuffle. On the first one, I agree with my co-panelist that perhaps the burden of the first move falls on the Chinese, because it is the Chinese, as he says, who betrayed the trust. Of course, you have to bear in mind in diplomacy that if you talk to the Chinese, they will not accept that version of events. And that is why I say that while the burden of restoring trust falls on the Chinese, ultimately both sides have to work at the relationship. So that's the first point I will make. On the second point that you have rightly raised about whether there is more convergence than divergence, it's hard to tell, because there have been some concrete outcomes from this dialogue of Mr. Ajit Doval and Wang Yi. First, I think there has been a restoration of the border trade. There is then an understanding that both sides will work and have a next round of meeting in Delhi. So all that is very good. But the fundamental divergence, I think, remains, and that is what I would like to spell out in a minute, if you allow me. The point I want to make is that our understanding of how the border issue impacts bilateral ties is not the same as the Chinese understanding. Our understanding is the border ties have impacted negatively the bilateral relationship. So, ipso facto, in order to restore the bilateral relationship to status quo ante, there has to be an improvement in the border and progress towards finding a fair, mutually acceptable border solution. The Chinese readout says that the border issue must be properly viewed in the light of bilateral relations. The properly viewed in bilateral relations is a term the Chinese have been using for the last 3 or 4 years. What they mean is, they say, set aside the border question for now. We will keep working at it, but it will take time. Meanwhile, restore the bilateral relationship to status quo ante. That is what the Chinese want. We have also said we want the border talks to be injected with vitality. That is the term we have used. The Chinese have said the border talks will continue and there will be an accumulation of small steps which will ultimately lead to a resolution. Ultimate is a word diplomats use, Scuffle, to refer to 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. We don't use the word ultimate to get a solution in 2 or 3 years' time. So that, I think, is the fundamental divergence. And that is indeed the reason, in my view, why there is a separate readout by the Indian side and a separate readout by the Chinese side. Having said all of this, I completely agree that it is not in the interest of India and China to not maintain a dialogue with each other. I am absolutely pleased that dialogue has been restored right from the Prime Minister's level down to the level of the working group, that is the Joint Secretary. I'm glad the special representatives have met after 5 years, and I'm glad we have started talking, because good old Winston Churchill was right. Jaw is better than war. You will appreciate that in the context of China.
Okay. And in the context of India and China, Lieutenant Kulkarni ji, two major developing countries in the world, we are looking at emerging economies, they are important members of the global south, that's what we know. So the healthy and stable development of China-India relations can contribute majorly to global south growth. I mean, this is a development that is keenly watched by the rest and the West.
No doubt about that. I think India and China are neighbors. You can't change your neighbors. And that both of us are old civilizations. Both have lived together for so many years. It's only after 1950 you can say that things have really gone wrong, because ever since they have actually become our neighbor and decided to become our neighbor. And if that be so, it is only after that that the trust betrayal part starts. Now, having said that, even the economies that we are referring to, China now obviously is an $18 trillion economy with the per capita GDP going beyond 14,000 US dollars. We are a $4 trillion economy, per capita GDP about 2,500 US dollars. Of course, they are miles ahead in terms of economy is concerned. It's very important for both the countries to, be able to mutually accept anything and everything. It cannot be one-way traffic. Chinese have, I personally felt, having interacted with them on numerous occasions on the border personnel meeting, very nice. It surprised me as to why they did and what they did in 2020. That was never expected, because been talking to them till 2016. And that was
I just want to quickly add this point here, since you're talking about the military aspect. Lieutenant Kulkarni, the military standoff along the LAC in eastern Ladakh of May 2020, you recalled that. Quickly followed by the deadly clash at the Galwan Valley in the June of the same year, resulted in severe strain in the ties between the two neighbors. Have we reached to a point after yesterday and the build-up to the yesterday, the two sides can effectively put this behind them?
See, yes, they can put all these things behind, because it's been happening on and off. It's not like that. This couple has been going on for many years. That's perfectly fine. But what is important is the trust deficit. And that to be able to earn trust, I look at it as not because I'm an Indian and I'm a military man, that it is China. It is China responsible for everything that has happened along the LAC and in eastern Ladakh. I have no doubt, because every now and then I've been dealing with them and it is perfectly fine. the very fact that they've done what they've done, and despite no shots being fired, is indicated they pick and choose. So all the agreements, peace and tranquility, no shot fired, but well, continue to pressurize India as much as they can, probably their way of checking on what is going on or what is happening, whether they can stand up to them or whatever it is. So India has stood up to them. And now probably China feels, now especially after the Trump has taken, is likely to take over there, maybe feeling a little this thing that, okay, let there be a tactical pause in this kind of a thing, and sort of what the ambassador rightly said, ultimately we will resolve the border dispute. That ultimate, one does not know when that would be, but the trust deficit is there. It's very important for China to earn the respect and earn the trust, because until and unless that is done, there is no use, because if the troops on the border are on tenterhooks, constantly verifying, that's not the way to live. If we have to be neighbors, and we have to ensure that on all fronts, if relationship has to be good, it's very important that both of us have a good relationship even along the LAC and not just everywhere else. And on the LAC, on tenterhooks, always constantly verifying, constantly under pressure, constantly trying to maneuver here and there, construct villages, dual purpose villages, get them over here, do what exactly. I think that is not the way China should do. And I well understand, I'm sure these kind of talks will help India and China to understand each other better. But well, for the last 75 years, this kind of a thing has been happening, and I don't visualize anything is going to happen very soon. Everything will get resolved.
Yes.
But notwithstanding that, if trust is regained, if the trust betrayal is not there from China, it's an excellent beginning, and I'm sure we can go back to, like the ambassador says, to status quo ante.
Okay. Ambassador Kumar, your take. Interestingly, China has described the hard-won talks as constructive.
Yes, I think I just want to conclude by saying that there are very strong geopolitical reasons why China has behaved the way it has. There are also reasons why India has reciprocated the Chinese extension of their olive branch, if you like. One of the geopolitical reasons is the unpredictability of the Trump presidency vis-a-vis China. The second important factor is the domestic headwinds that China faces, particularly the economic headwinds. The third, I would say, is that I had always felt that China has opened one front too many. They have a problem in the South China Sea. They have a problem in the East China Sea. They have a problem in Taiwan Strait. And they have a problem with the superpower United States trying to rival the US. I don't think this was very clever, frankly. And therefore, I also believe there is a tactical reason why China wants to have one lesser front with India. After all, they know that India is not a military threat to China, given the power differential between the two countries. So I attribute the extension of olive branch by China to geopolitics. I attribute India responding to it also in terms of our focus on economy. India wants to develop economically. And one of the reasons, frankly, and this is no secret, there has been a demand by our own business people and others that there should be business ties with China, and that we are dependent on China for many of the items that we import.
Okay. Ambassador Kumar, since you are making a point, concluding remarks from you, the significance overall considering these talks at the SR level or SR engagement, they took after a long hiatus of 5 years. Same question to Lieutenant General Kulkarni, but Ambassador Kumar, you first.
No, hugely important. Despite, I don't want to sound pessimistic, I'm merely saying the future is not going to be easy between these two countries, but nobody can deny that there is now a thaw in the relationship, and there is a clear desire on both sides to talk about the problems that they have in common.
Right. Yes. General Kulkarni.
A positive development, no denying the fact, and hopefully relations, if they improve, it would help both the countries. And very important that there should be peace and tranquility along the LAC. That's very, very important. And I think it's a win-win situation. And if it's fair, mutual, and it's acceptable to both the sides, I think trust has to be earned by China. If that is done, It's mutually beneficial, will benefit both the countries.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Kumar, for decoding these, what does this really mean as far as the forward movement of China and India bilateral relations are concerned. And thank you very much, Lieutenant General Kulkarni. Thank you. And now let's move on to some more stories on this broadcast. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Thursday spoke to Britain's King Charles III, reaffirming India's commitment to strengthen India-UK ties. Prime Minister Modi wrote on social media platform X that, and I quote, "It was a pleasure to speak with King Charles III today. His Majesty King Charles III today reaffirmed commitment to bolster India-UK ties, engaged views on issues of mutual interest, including the Commonwealth, climate action and sustainability, wished him good health and well-being," unquote. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has greeted the people on the occasion of the Goa Liberation Day on Thursday. Prime Minister also recalled the bravery and determination of those who were involved in the movement to free Goa. Prime Minister, taking to social media platform X, said, and I quote, "Today on Goa Liberation Day, we recall the bravery and determination of the great women and men who were actively involved in the movement to free Goa. Their valor motivates us to keep working for the betterment of Goa and the prosperity of the people of the state." Prime Minister also attended the event for Christmas celebration at the residence of India's Minister of State for Minority Affairs George Kurian in New Delhi on Thursday. Prime Minister Modi also interacted with the eminent members of the Christian community. Event was attended by bishops and other senior priests of the Catholic and Syrian Orthodox churches. Prime Minister Modi also lit a candle at the Christmas nativity scene. India's Home Minister Amit Shah chaired a high-level security review meeting on Jammu Kashmir in New Delhi on Thursday. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha, along with top senior officials from the Army, paramilitary forces, Jammu and Kashmir administration, intelligence agencies and Ministry of Home Affairs attended the meeting. Addressing the meeting, the Home Minister said that in line with Prime Minister Modi's zero-tolerance policy against terrorism, we will achieve the goal of terror-free Jammu and Kashmir at the earliest, and all resources will be made available for this. The Minister appreciated efforts of the security agencies for a significant decline in terrorist incidents, infiltration and recruitment of youth in terror organizations. India's premier military research and development agency, the DRDO, and the top University of Indian Institute of Technology or IIT Delhi have transferred their designed and developed prototypes and technologies to private and public sector industries. The Center for Excellence of DRDO and IIT Delhi have developed clothing for extremely cold climates and bulletproof jackets, the agreements for commercialization of which were signed in New Delhi on Thursday.
Create such an industry, such an ecosystem which will help us not only becoming Atmanirbhar but also becoming technology leaders. So it's very good to see now the vision translating into actual demonstration of what such a center of excellence can achieve. Although we have 15 centers of excellence, I want to use this opportunity to congratulate IIT Delhi because this is the first center of excellence where this transition has really happened.
लार्ज स्केल प्रोडक्शन में जाए और हमारी सर्विसेज सोल्जर्स के लिए एक्चुअली इम्प्लीमेंट हो जाए, तो ये हमारे लिए एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण स्टेप है. फर्स्ट स्टेप towards seeing that we can actually build technology which can scale and make a difference for our services and our armed forces. We want to provide, through our knowledge and our research, a competitive edge for our soldiers and our services.
Now let's take a look at some other stories making news. India marked a major milestone in maritime defence today with the plate-cutting ceremony for the first of 14 fast petrol vessels and 6 next-gen offshore petrol vessels for the Indian Coast Guard. These advanced vessels will enhance the Coast Guard's ability to secure maritime borders, conduct search and rescue missions and respond swiftly to emerging security threats. INS Tushil, the Indian Navy's latest multi-role stealth-guided missile frigate, set sail from Kaliningrad, Russia for her maiden operational deployment. The ship will traverse the Baltic Sea, North Sea, Atlantic Ocean and Indian Ocean, making port calls at friendly nations and also conducting joint patrols and maritime exercises, including in piracy hotspots. You're watching DD India News Hour, and quickly let's move on to some sports news. The International Cricket Council, or the ICC, has said on Thursday that matches between India and Pakistan at ICC events that either nation is due to host will be played at neutral venues. The arrangement will apply to 2 major ICC events next year, which are the Men's Champions Trophy in Pakistan and the Women's ODI World Cup in India. The rule will also be in place for the Men's T20 World Cup in 2026, which India will co-host alongside Sri Lanka, and the Women's T20 World Cup in 2028 in Pakistan. The neutral venue will be proposed by the tournament host board and will need to be approved by the ICC. And as we wrap up this edition, we leave you with some stunning visuals of Christmas from Mexico City's Zocalo. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.